It's episode 290. Oh my God. Of the platformers. Of the platformers, a show about games and nerd culture. And I am your host, Brian Barnett.
I'm the next one along the line, Kris Cornelise, aka Delphi.
Oh, what up? I'm Will Berger. Hi.
And this week we are here to talk about actually not a whole lot of things, but we're going to get to what we get to. So I am enjoying a nice little beverage that I have lovingly dubbed the Polish Party, after the Polish Party that happens at PAX West. And Will and I went to that and had a grand old time. But when I was first taken to this event and squired about by one Andrew Wolf, who himself has made maybe 7 appearances on this very show in years past, they introduced me to a delightful little beverage that is unfiltered apple juice or apple cider and Zubrovka bison grass vodka. And I highly recommend it because it is quite delectable, and I may already be feeling the effects of this delightful little tonic right now.
Well, if it wasn't the middle of the day here, I would consider, mixing something. But
yeah,
it's the middle of the day here, and I may need to do things else, once we're done here. So,
This
nice.
is my second rum and coke of the night.
Nice. Well done. Well
Can't
done.
go wrong.
Well,
For me, I have cordial. So,
wait, ladies and gentlemen, and people of all kinds, what shall we talk about tonight?
well,
I don't know.
we're all kind of in the lull where major reviews and such, we're either working on things or not quite there, or we know there's major stuff coming. There's Super Mario in a week. That's probably going to be the talk of the town for a while, even if I don't know how much of that I'm going to play, but it's usually a big deal. New mainline Mario.
I think yesterday or 2 days ago, I think it was yesterday, pre-ordered both Super Mario Wonder and Spider-Man 2. So I will be picking those up on Friday from my local Best Buy, which I am quite excited about. An interesting thing, Simon Carty did the IGN review, and basically his takeaway was this is the best of the Spider-Man games, but the open world stuff suffers in quality, which, just holds true to what we've been talking about, which is games probably need to be not as big, not as expansive. The open world stuff needs to be very intentional if you're going to do it. So I'm very curious to see what I think about it once I start playing it, but I am incredibly excited to play more Super Mario Wonder. Will and I played that, as you will see in our PAX preview episode. We played that at PAX West. That game fucking rips ass. It's so good, and I cannot wait to play more.
Yeah, every time people are like, "Oh, it comes out like this week," I'm like, "What?" I can't. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So because until you had said it, I had not remembered that it was out this week. So I'm like, "Oh, that's neat. That'll be a fun game to play with Kira, or maybe online, depending on the Nintendo servers. Maybe it'll have online. Do we know if it has online multiplayer, actually?
Ooh, I actually don't know about that. Dude, if it has online multiplayer, you and I have to play this. That is going to be so fun.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Maybe we could get the wives together also.
Dude, yes. Although Audrey is not a huge, she's not a Mario fan. She's like a Mario Kart specific, enthusiast.
A Mario Kart enthusiast.
She's
nothing wrong with that.
I think the saying, she used to have this saying where she would be like, "I'm a very nice person. I will emotionally destroy you at Mario Kart." And I was like, "Damn, all right, it's like that, huh? All right." Mario Wonder online.
It does look like it does have multiplayer. Creating private rooms allows friends to play together or race. And it looks like it has a ghost or phantom mechanic kind of thing.
No online co-op, but it does have online play, according to NintendoLife.com. One big surprise.
Usually knows what they're talking about.
The direct shared details on the game's online multiplayer, but one big surprise is that it doesn't have traditional online co-op, really. You can co-op locally with up to 4 people, but Mario Wonder's online play is completely different, encouraging you to create rooms for friends and participate in friend races. In these rooms, you can see what level your friends are currently playing and play those same levels. You'll appear as a live shadow that can revive them or give them items. One other neat addition, though, is a sort of Dark Souls-esque mechanic. Even in Mario, you can't escape it, guys. Where you can leave a standee.
You have been invaded by Luigi.
Where you can leave a standee. You've been invaded by Luigi. Hold on, I gotta make a note of this. Hold on.
It's more likely you'd be invaded by like Wario or some shit. You know?
Yeah.
The
middle ground.
You've been invaded by the ghost of Luigi. Where you can leave a standee in a level and any player online can touch it if they die to revive themselves. That's not a Dark Souls mechanic. What are you talking about? Standees can be bought from shops. Did you play Dark Souls? Dark Souls is available on Switch Nintendo Live. You should have played it. Standees can be bought from shops throughout the game, and there are more than just Mario standees. If you touch someone else's standee, you'll see their heart points, which shows how many people they've helped online by reviving or giving items. Now, there was a mechanic in many of the Dark Souls games. This is not true, I don't think, in Elden Ring, but where if somebody put down a soapstone message and you liked it, it would heal them or refill their Estus flasks in their own game.
This was in Elden Ring as well.
Oh, it was? Okay. I basically never... Yeah, I never...
The first person to put down a message next to a turtle that says, "Is this a dog?" Basically, just everyone liked that.
They're unkillable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That mechanic is interesting. That is a bummer about no online co-op. I wonder if there's a workaround. If you do like the forbidden tech. Anyways, we're not going to talk about that. But I'm excited about Mario Wonder. That's going to be. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that it's going to be great. Like even before we played it, I think the general understanding is any Mario game is at least going to be good.
Listen, all I need to know is it says Nintendo on the box. It says Nintendo on the box. Like, all right, you had me.
Will Berger, known ARMS enthusiast.
Listen, ARMS is actually a fairly decent fighting game.
Yeah.
He's right.
I mean, I don't know if it's like an all-time great fighting game, but it's not bad.
I will say, with ARMS and also with Splatoon, I did appreciate that Nintendo was doing something new instead of just... Now, so we talk a lot about franchises. Well, actually, I don't think we actually talk about franchises getting run into the ground. We talk about...
We could.
Mechanics being shoehorned in where they don't belong, like open world, these sorts of things. But we don't often actually talk about franchise fatigue. Because we don't cover films. There's been a lot of talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which actually we've done spoiler casts on this show when the Marvel Cinematic Universe was more of a like...
When it was actually relevant, I suppose.
I was going to say in vogue, yeah. But even when it was like more... When they were like cultural events... Like we did Infinity War.
Everyone was watching.
Yes. We did Infinity War spoiler casts. We did Endgame spoiler casts. And that was awesome. We also did that with Star Wars a bit. But now it's not as relevant. But there has been criticism for a long time in the like film and television industry about like Marvel and Disney and, you know, Star Wars just running shit into the ground.
It's a production line. There's no real creative thought or process into it. What is there is usually, you know, done as best as they can, despite mandates, despite, you know, quotas and things. Really short conditions on how long you can actually work and write your script. It's like, you know, they're turning out full scripts of this stuff in like 2 weeks. After halfway through, they have to scrap it again. It's like, you know, just.
Yeah,
but
the
the machine has to keep rolling, and there's massive diminishing returns on it, as we've seen. Like no one cares anymore, right?
Yeah,
like it should have taken a break after Endgame, definitely, but even so, it just kept on going. And yeah, like the only thing that's worth a damn in anything recent that I can think of is obviously the Spider-Man movies, not counting Spider-Verse. That's its own thing, way better as well.
I still need to see the second Spider-Verse movie. I really want to.
You do. You really do.
It's quite good.
It's excellent.
You can see all the people who missed their children's birthdays to animate that film.
Seriously, I have no idea how the hell they did that. Besides,
They skipped their children's birthdays to animate the film.
Like there have been pieces that have come out about this, right, Will? Like I believe I saw at least one where it was like they were given like 2 weeks or something to finish like one particular section or something, and they crunched hella hard on like one of the things that is apparently one of the more impressive scenes in that movie. I don't know. But yeah, there's stuff like that I still haven't seen. Fucking John Wick 4. Like I need to see that.
Neither have I.
John Wick 4 rules.
I mean, John Wick just in general rules. Yeah. Anything Keanu does, like I just want to be there, which is why I need to get back to Cyberpunk.
I hit franchise fatigue after the third John Wick movie because it was like, this is pushing it a bit. So it's kind of where I got to. And then none of my friends could pick the day or wherever to actually go see it as an event. So it's like, I didn't get around to it.
Gotcha.
I think I like 4 better than 3. So like, if you haven't seen John Wick 4, I would recommend seeing it. I think 3 is like maybe the worst one.
I think it's the worst of the 3 that I've
But I still think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's still a good movie. It's just, its problem is that it comes after 2, which is the one I think is the best one.
Yes, I agree. 2 has the fight with Common, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, 2 is awesome.
Yeah, 2 is great.
And 3 is the one with Halle Berry and the dogs, right?
Yes, there is the one with Halle Berry and the dogs.
Yeah.
And the dude from Iron Chef.
Yeah. Okay, let me. We're gonna take a sharp left turn into like. Do you guys like James Bond movies?
Yes,
I've seen all of them several times.
Okay, so so I have not seen a lot of Halle Berry movies. I have seen her in John Wick 3, in the James Bond movies, which is, I think the movie she is in is it's definitely the worst Pierce Brosnan Bond movie. It's it's in the lower half of James Bond movies in general, I think.
It's in like the bottom 5. It's terrible.
And then she's like a very nothing character as Storm in the X-Men movies. Is Halle Berry part of the problem?
No,
I
think she's great. I just think I think it's
3. She's fine.
I think it's very and
poor luck probably
for real. I do think that John Wick 3 was weak. I thought that she was when she came in with her dog. I thought that was a very interesting idea. I thought that she was one of the more interesting things that happened in that movie for real. But I did think about that and then think about like the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie where he's like driving across the ice with her or something. I forget what the fuck they were trying to stop. Like some dude that had a bunch of shrapnel exploded on his face or something.
It was GoldenEye again. That's literally the plot.
Yeah, isn't it?
Just a rehash of GoldenEye. It's like this was. It's not even like redoing an old idea of a Bond. It's literally Pierce Brosnan. I don't get why they decided to do it like 3 movies later. It's
You're really gonna try to do the best James Bond movie and just not have Alec Trevelyan in it? Like, come on, you can't do that. You can't do that.
I think GoldenEye is the best James Bond movie is a crazy take, but
Without
it's the best Pierce Brosnan one. I'll give you that.
It's top 5, like easily. But I don't think it's the best.
It's you're gonna try to make GoldenEye, but without having Famke Janssen try to strangle people to death while she's having sex with them. Come on, I'm not here for this.
Listen, the one-liners in GoldenEye are all-timers.
Dude, they're so good. I mean, so here's the thing. Pierce Brosnan, and I know that we are way off on games, but this is nerd culture, so I'm just gonna
GoldenEye
take it.
Is a major game.
The
game is really good.
Take it and run with it. But one thing,
GoldenEye, the film based on the game for the Nintendo 64.
Slappers only. But the funny so Pierce Brosnan is my James Bond. When I think of James Bond, I think of Pierce Brosnan. That is one because those were the movies that were coming out when I was of the age to be watching James Bond movies. Yeah. Yes. Also, Pierce Brosnan would probably be my James Bond anyway because my dad actually looks a lot like Pierce Brosnan. So like there's also an element of that where like I also
What if your
feel
dad was cool?
I also feel very familiar with Pierce Brosnan because he looks like my dad. So like I have a great affinity for him in that. And GoldenEye was the first. It was the first of his movies, but it was also the first one that I saw. I think GoldenEye might actually have been the first James Bond movie I saw. So this goes back to like the discussion that Will and I have where he's like, why do you like Final Fantasy VIII? And I'm like, it was my first Final Fantasy, shut up. And he's like, okay, that makes sense. Which I don't actually think it was my favorite. I think
bias is a discussion.
I think my first Final Fantasy was actually like Final Fantasy Legends for the Game Boy or some shit like that. Like something just inexcusable, really,
which
if you look at it.
is itself technically not a Final Fantasy game. It's a Saga game.
It's totally different. It's a totally different thing. But yeah.
What was mine? I think it was 4. I think it was a
7 or 10.
It was a perfectly legally acquired copy on PC of 4.
Yeah.
No laws were broken.
No laws were broken. No people were harmed in the creating of this Final Fantasy memory.
Yeah.
Yo, so Brian, I have to ask you a question, right?
Sure.
If your dad looks like Pierce Brosnan, right? Like,
yeah,
one of like the most famous, like handsome, Hollywood leading men. What happened with you, bro?
Dude, I knew that was fucking coming.
You knew where this was going. But
I will say, we're gonna get real for a second.
I kid. I think Brian is actually very handsome. I kid, but yeah.
Thank you. I will say, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. I was gonna say I will send Will pictures of me when I was at my peak, the peak of my powers. And I think you would be hard pressed to say that I was not an incredibly good looking dude. Now, ever since I got a hernia like 10 years back, and it took me out of, I don't know if anybody knows about hernias, but when you have surgery like that, they basically say you're not allowed to lift like anything for like a month. And then it increases like 5 pounds after that. So I basically couldn't do a lot of the stuff that I did at the time to be really active. And since then, like after that time, I was like 10 pounds heavier. And then after that, I was 10 pounds heavier than that. And the most I ever got was 30 pounds up. And now I've gotten back down to like 10 or 20 pounds up or something like that from where I was initially at like the peak of my powers. So I'm trying to get back there, but I've never quite been able to reach that same peak as I was like, I think 13 years ago or something, when I was like in the 150s or 160s. Now I'm like 180, 181 right now. So
when he was young and quick and full of promise.
When I was a music teacher and I was playing drums like fucking 5 or 6 hours a day, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that'd do it.
That doesn't hurt,
Yeah. And also I lived with people who made, I think, almost exclusively like vegetarian food or something like that. So like combination of those two things really did a lot for me. So, but we're trying to get back there. We're doing a lot of plant-based stuff here, and it's nice. I had 2 like chicken burgers or turkey burgers with lettuce wraps and a bunch of veggies and stuff like that today. So like I'm slowly working my way back down. I was like 195. Yeah, I was like 195, 196 for a long time. And now I'm like back down to 181. So like I'm slowly trying to make my way back there. I lifted last night. I'm walking like a couple of hours a day on this treadmill that's under my desk. Like I'm trying to get back there. But yes, something happened. Something very terrible happened between my dad and me, such that I came out the horrible goblin that you see before you.
You embrace the chaos gremlin energy.
It's true. Will may act like one, but I look like one.
That's true. Man, this podcast is not at all organized or...
Well, we knew that going into it. It's like we don't have any major topic talking points, so we're just going to ramble and go where. Yeah. Although it is still interesting that we got here. Sure, but it is just interesting that we got here when I mentioned friggin' Super Mario. And here we are.
Yeah.
Dude, I tell you guys, weird stuff happens when I've been drinking. But I will also say that my buddy Andrew Wolf from Nintendo and Deku Deals gave me this freaking Satisfy grip. Have you guys seen this thing?
I have not. Looks good though.
It comes with its own custom cases, a Tears of the Kingdom branded one. He gave this to me, and this has like really been great because I've been playing a lot of stuff on the Switch. So I've been using this.
One of those because I'm starting to feel it.
I find it like really obnoxious to play stuff on the Switch. And once I switched to this, it's made things way easier. So once I went to I went to Seattle recently to see the 20th anniversary of Give Up by the Postal Service and Transatlanticism by Death Cab for Cutie. And so we saw that show at Kraken Arena, and the Beths opened up for them, which is a band that I've been all about lately. So check out the Beths. Knees Deep and Expert in a Dying Field are incredible songs, and you should definitely go check them out. But we actually saw that show on literally the day that was the 20th anniversary of Transatlanticism, and right down the street from where all those songs were written, which was really cool. But I got to see my old buddy Andrew Wolf. He gave me this. I've been playing Disguise 7. I've been playing a lot of other stuff, including the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, which is a like tarot card indie game. I am incredibly early in. I have not played hardly any. I've made my Eldritch bargain with the like behemoth from Beyond the Stars, and have started to kind of build my tarot deck, my own like tarot deck or whatever. I guess not tarot deck, but my own like deck of cards. So that is pretty cool. I'm so early that like I'm not even sure what to say about it, because I'm still like in like the establishing kind of prologue, I guess. But that's just kind of what I've been into, other than like more Baldur's Gate 3, which has just been Act 2 stuff. I've gotten through a couple of other encounters. I've gotten like a bunch of new powerful equipment. And I'm just trying to kind of plug my way through Baldur's Gate 3 to get ready for our big review discussion. So I'm dreading it.
I need to go back. I need to go back to my individual playthrough. I dabbled a little bit recently in a multiplayer playthrough of it, just continuing it's almost like we're shitposting our way through it just to see what we can do and how much we can break it. But like, yeah, because we've all of us have finished or seen the ending of in that little group. So we're just like, so what kind of fuckery are we going to commence here? And it's like, we're going to make this antagonist dance, get a bard, make him dance. We do that, mission accomplished. And then we're just shitposting our way through to Act 3 to make it happen. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's been my experience recently with Baldur's Gate 3. I need to finish it and prep myself, but I don't know. Don't have as much drive for it. Partially because, I've been playing Starfield and then Cyberpunk, and then going back to that, it's like, so many. I want smaller games. I want other things,
Yeah. One thing that I think is interesting. So, Kris, do you have like a go-to class when you play these sorts of games? Will and I had this discussion when we played Lords of the Fallen, where I was like, I just always play a caster in Souls-like. So I chose the caster, and that was a bad decision.
We made a mistake.
We made a mistake. We should have known. But that's basically just how I always do things. I always play casters, because I mean, not always. Like, this is something that Will and I was also talking about in like fighting games, where it's like, I'm going back to BlazBlue, and I'm like, should I pick up 9? Like, she's a wizard. Should I play Asuka in Guilty Gear? Like, he's a wizard,
You're a wizard, Brian.
I find that archetype like so interesting, because in fiction, as a wizard in a world with magic, you can do anything. So like, it really opens the doors to creativity, and that's something that I'm really interested in. Whereas like, if like I'm really strong and I have a sword or my fists is like kind of boring to me, unless you get into like My Hero Academia like arenas where it's like
we can't all be Toshinori.
Yeah, where it's just like
character is.
Yeah, where it's just like All Might is literally so strong that he punches and it makes rainstorms. Like he's so strong that his punches affect the weather and shit. Like that's nuts. Like that's cool, But
and how do you balance Superman or have a fall of Superman while still, just
or One Punch Man.
I love him in that series.
Yes,
so much.
where One Punch Man, where it's like this character is so powerful. One punch from him just ends any fight. What do you do in a story?
Yeah.
Like it's like, yeah. And so if you're not doing something like that, I'm just like, well, strength is just fucking boring. Like give me a way to like break shit. Like give me a way to, I can cast a spell and teleport all of my friends across the universe or whatever. Like magic is so much more interesting to me. So I typically go that way. Not necessarily because they will let me break things or let me get super creative, because not all games let you do that, but I like the possibility. So that's kind of where I go with things. I'm curious, like, because I picked a sorcerer in Baldur's Gate, like, do you have a go-to class that you do in RPGs or anything like that? Or do you just kind of embrace whatever whim catches you in the moment?
I'd like to say I have a type, but truth be, I have several, and I just kind of, in my head, almost the way I do things is that I have like characters that I create, and I've got a few recurring characters of sorts that I have just come with me through my own fiction or ascended MMO characters or whatever. But that archetype that I have developed will then, if there is a character or a position or a setting or whatever that kind of fits that character identity, I'll just go, I will make them. I will make an incarnation here. So it's like when I make a rogue, it is always going to be a specific kind of rogue that pertains to one character. And
they're always going to be named Locke.
Yeah. Yeah, they're always going to be named Korra. And, and that is the character I'm running in my solo Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough. It's just like, I went a rogue, half-elf girl. And just been doing it like that. And
or if I want to go later Final Fantasy, they're always named Balthier, and they're always like a Han Solo copy, or whatever.
They're always voiced by Gideon Emery, etc. Yeah. But so that's kind of how I do things. It's like, what character will fit this, of the wheelhouse of characters that I kind of gravitate towards. And sometimes I'll make something new. That's not like I'm, locked into those particular things, but it really depends. But
it's also really tantalizing to me to like think about what I would specifically do in those scenarios, and to create a character that is like a me, not surrogate, but like what's the word? Would it be surrogate? But like basically like a version of me in that world. So like, self-insert character like that, where like if that was the case, then like I definitely wouldn't be a sorcerer. Like I would be a bard, because like that's part of what I do. Like I'm a singer. Like I write music. I've been a musician for like 20 years or more, actually, by this point. Like I've been a musician for 30 or 29 years at this point, maybe 20 of those being professional. And so like a part of me is like, well, man, like that kind of makes me want to play through Baldur's Gate as like a bard and like see what that does. Cause like, does that speak to me on some deeper level? Like, I don't know. Or like when I thought like, and this was a legitimate thought, Will, I'm very curious to hear if you've had any, the answer is probably no, but like, I'm curious about like in fighting games being like, well, I'm a drummer, so I am very familiar with, I guess not fighting, but acting with one weapon in each hand. And so when I played Persona 4 Arena, I chose Yosuke because he has two kunai that are about the same size as drumsticks. And I was like, if I was actually in this world, this would be a fighting style that I would be very familiar with, because I've been playing the drums for 20 years. That is hitting very specific places with like two weapons of similar type. Like I'll do this. Like, and I don't know if that's like a totally foreign idea, but there is an idea, like there is like some drive in me that's like, let me find some approximation of this that is actually the most close to my experience, or the most close to like what I would actually be doing in this world based off of not who I would be if I was born in this world, but like who I am actually now.
Yeah, so like I've kind of done that. Never in like something like, you know, Persona or Guilty Gear or whatever. But like part of the reason I played Jin in Tekken and then Lydia later on was because like they both did a style of karate that reminded me of like the one I learned when I was practicing. So I'd be like, oh, this is cool. Like this reminds me of stuff I used to do, right? So I would pick those characters. So yeah, I think it's there to an extent. And I think, you know, like fighting games are such a personal, especially with like characters, like you have like such a personal connection to your main character for whatever reason that you pick them. You know, it could be they look cool, it could be that you like their moves, it could be anything, right? Like, but once you find that character that like,
or
I don't know,
for me, like the Kai and Sin are very positive, like, you know, see the best in people type of people. Like that's,
yeah, it could be. Yeah, you just like their personality, right? Like, or like something about them reminds you of like your own worldview, you know, whatever that is. Like, I think that's
they're good-looking blondes that are idealistic, you know.
Yeah, there you go. You know, I think like the cool thing about fighting games is you can have like those relationships with those characters that allow you to express like yourself in the game, which is not something that often happens in other genres.
Yeah. It can be hard to find someone that clicks perfectly, both in terms of your expression, the moveset, and everything. But when you do get that click moment, it's like it's like, oh yeah, main discovered. I'm just locking in on this. Like Brian witnessed firsthand when I'm just like, you know, got my hands on Rashid. I'm like, ooh
yeah,
this is it.
Or like yeah, when
I wasn't vibing with Kimberly as much as I thought I would, but then here we go, Rashid. Here we go.
Yeah, or like you know, when Will was on the call with me, when like I was trying out Sin for the first time when he first came out, when he was maybe the worst character in the game, definitely bottom 2. Like when he was just awful, when I was like, hey, wait a second, hold on. This guy might be onto something here, you know? And then of course he gets buffed into, you know, maybe top 5, you know, who knows? Who knows? Let's find out together, people. Let's find out.
Yeah. You don't pick for balance unless either you're looking for easy wins or you're at the competitive edge and it's like, I can no longer get any higher with what I have. I'm at the point where I'm now so good that I need to find an edge somewhere else. And it's like, that's realistically not going to happen to 99% of the players of fighting games and such. Definitely never going to happen to me. I don't stick with them long enough. So yeah, it's like, I'll play who I want because I'm never going to get to the point where it's going to matter significantly. It's like, if I enjoy playing this, I'm more likely to stick with this than if I'm playing something that is good, but I don't enjoy the play style, or, you know, or I'm just using it to ride the points. It's like, cool, I'm at a higher rank. Now what?
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not enjoying myself. So
and as Will is so oft likely to say, I would simply gap.
I would simply gap. Like I would simply just be better than the other person.
Yeah.
There you go.
Which, you know, has worked out pretty good. For me,
it's worked out for me as well. So I can't argue. I can't argue with the sentiment. I've been gapping people with Sin for a while now, and now bro is gotten better at Axel, and I gotta fucking, you know, I gotta
put the work in now.
I gotta put the work in to gap again.
Yeah, you gotta. It's the thing, right? Like you level up, and then your buddies level up, and you're like, oh crap, I have to level up again.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
New tech discovered. How do I find the counter? Oh boy.
Yeah,
the never-ending grind of the game.
Yeah, but that's part of what's good about it. Now, thankfully, I don't have to do that with Baldur's Gate, which is nice. I'm very excited. However, it is definitely one of those experiences where like part of me wishes there were not so many. We were not just completely inundated with great video games right now, because I would love to play this game over again and just see how different things would be just knowing what I know now. 'Cause like I did something and like there was some creepy looking characters and I hid from them, and now it looks like maybe hiding from them was not the right decision because there was a major opportunity that somebody told me about later, and I was like, dang dang it, like I should have done that, because then I wouldn't have to do all of these other things to, get where I need to be. But I am so curious to play more Baldur's Gate 3 in the future and play it as like the Dark Urge, or like just as an evil person instead of somebody who's generally going around trying to help people. Like, I'm so curious how different that is going to be. I imagine it's going to be pretty different.
Yeah. Well, my friend at the moment is going through a Dark Urge playthrough and just like telling me, basically just meant like, I've got a handful of friends just in our Discord. If we go through games and we find them interesting, we just go beat for beat, talk through our experiences and such. So she's going through Dark Urge playthrough and, comparing and contrasting. And there's interesting stuff there for sure, both in terms of new aspects of the plot that it opens up, different character relations, different events and such. I don't know how much that would differ from just, I am not the Dark Urge, but I'm just being an evil prick. I don't know. Hard to say. And then there's areas where it just like, where the nuance just isn't there. Or you feel like it should be and it just isn't. And then it kind of goes back to the whole, BioWare kicking puppies, you are evil kind of thing. And it's like, you can do better than that. But we'll see.
One of the things that's interesting to me is how like some of the stuff early on, like even in Act 1, is like, it would literally never occur to me. It would never have occurred to me to not do the thing that I did in Act 1 and go with like the other side. Like, it would literally not occur to me to do that unless people were like, hey, like there's another character that you can get if you do things this other way. And I was like, what?
Yeah, but some people only discovered that when, looting the corpse. Like, wait a minute, those are player Oh.
Yeah, and I'm just like now I want to experience this other side of things that's like super crazy. And there is an element of like when I played, Knights of the Old Republic or Knights of the Old Republic 2, I can't remember which one, but I went like, I was super dark side. I was just like, I don't give a fuck about you. What's in this for me? And if not, fuck you. I'm going to kill you. That sort of a thing. Like sometimes I would play that sort of a thing as like, or like in the original Baldur's Gate 2, when it was like, when I'll keep it vague for people who have not played Baldur's Gate 2 who are going to, because of the provenance of Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, it's the greatest game ever made, so like whatever. But there is a moment when you get to decide, are you going to revel in some sort of opportunity that you have, or are you going to not? And I was like, hell yeah, let's get in there, baby. And I
push
was
the special action button, unlock that.
Yeah.
Censored, yeah.
And I was rewarded in a lot of different avenues, but it also had repercussions. And I was just like, screw you, baby. I'm going to be me. You know what I mean? And I'm going to be me in whatever that means for you. I don't really care. And like embracing that sort of, dark urge, as it were, was really interesting for me. And I do find it fascinating that RPGs let you carry out these sorts of things that you would never in a million years do in your own life. And I think that is one of the great values of these sorts of immersive, like RPG, games and things like that.
I think that's the strength of the good CRPGs, is that they do explore these aspects. They explore both in terms of the intended story and just you have the option to go this other way. And sometimes it's more developed, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's really just, laughably simple. But, again, like we've talked on this show before, how tyranny slaps for exactly that. And it's like, yes, it does. So, yeah, it's...
But even then, you can choose to be a real piece of shit. And you can also choose to be somebody who like, I think you should leave, used to be a piece of shit, but now is trying to turn over a new leaf and all that sort of stuff. And I think that those situations are really interesting. And I really appreciate immersive RPG makers for giving us opportunities to explore these aspects of humanity. I'll put it that way.
And it's a hard ask. It is a difficult thing to develop, especially when, half your game may never be seen by most of the players.
Or more.
So,
there is a lot of stuff in Baldur's Gate 3 that, I have never seen and will never see. Somebody was talking about how, there's a fight with gnolls early on, and they were playing a paladin as their character, and they blessed the corpses of, the hyenas or the dogs or whatever. And so the gnolls, which are born of a curse, just never came out. So that fight was literally one enemy instead of 10 or whatever. And it's just that's crazy. Thinking about that, I know that that's a very simple example, but expanding that to encompass an entire world is nuts. I'm super impressed with what Larian has done.
Various options with classes and interactions and things like that, and how much it plays in.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's less of it as the game goes on because they were pressed for time.
Yeah.
A lot of the Act 1 stuff is, it was in early access for 3 years. We played it to death. We talked about it. We let them know, and they adjusted accordingly. The later parts of the game do not have that luxury, and it shows.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. Still,
I wonder.
Don't get me wrong. There's still flexibility and such, but you'll see.
Do you think that will get expanded as time goes on?
Almost certainly.
No
they're
way.
already still patching it, but
yeah, there's no way they don't. Right, the game has made so much money, and I remember initially, right, they were we're not going to do DLC, and then the game made buckets and buckets of money, and they were we're going to do DLC, you guys. 100%, 100%.
If they do a Divinity Original Sin 2 style definitive edition where it's just, more and tighter and better, that's probably better. I don't know necessarily how much they want to do expansions and such or restore, content that they didn't finish. I don't know if we'll get a Throne of Baal situation or anything like that, where just a full-on old school expansion pack. I don't know if that's typically in Larian's wheelhouse, but who knows? We'll see. But they're not just going, no, we're straight on to our next project with this. No, hell no. They're just holy shit, we made so much money. Everyone's loving this. We can probably do something with it. And yeah, they're still patching, bugs and optimization and such right now. Some of which break the game more so than they fix.
Yeah.
So patch 3 has caused problems in my playthrough, no end. So, ugh.
Do we know, has this game come out? Has it come out on Xbox yet?
As far as I know, no.
I am uncertain if it is console release yet.
Okay, Windows 3rd of August 2023, PlayStation 5 6th of September 2023, Mac OS 22nd of September 2023, Xbox Series XS 2023. So it looks like this is on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but
I believe Series S was the albatross around their neck, as they keep saying.
And then they decided that it didn't need to actually have feature parity, so that they could actually get it launched on Series X, which I think is a good decision.
Remember when this was a big Stadia release?
Apparently, yeah. So it was nominated for Best Original Song at the 11th and 12th Hollywood Music and Media Awards. And then it's nominated for 5 awards for the Golden Joystick, which is Best Storytelling, Best Game Community, Best Visual Design, PC Game of the Year, and Studio of the Year. Which I think are all probably deserved.
It's going to be a contender for at least half the categories.
Yeah.
So.
It's gonna do well. I think
I'm not even halfway done with it, and I'm it is in my short list for Game of the Year, for sure.
I would not put it there because I've had so many technical problems with it, just an outrageous number of technical problems. I have T-posed through so much stuff. You remember that cutscene at the beginning?
What are you playing on?
PC.
Okay. So on my desktop, on my laptop, I have had T-pose and weird issues. On my desktop, I haven't at all. So I think that's really, if I was playing it on my laptop only, I would definitely be there with you. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, like
I've had some, and Act 3, like, ooh, that's a whole different game in terms of how well and optimized and such it is. So if you're having the issues now, then you better hope the patches work, because holy shit. But yeah, I don't know. Holy
yeah,
shit's
part of me
weird.
is
But,
just
yeah,
kind of
I
like
don't know.
maybe I should just
Yeah, part of
chill.
me
Like
is
the game will
that,
be just as good next year. I do think it's crazy. Like the conversation around that game has been like, oh, it's so amazing. Like nobody's ever done anything like this before. Blah 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 blah. And it's like this is just like another It's another CRPG. Like I get it. Like we haven't had like a CRPG like that, like with that vibe in a really long time. That like
and
feels
not in mainstream focus, because again, us CRPG sickos have been sitting there going, yeah, this isn't even that great by that standards. Like aspects of it are certainly, but like again, I am well and truly in the camp of Baldur's Gate 2 is better, like even as old as it is, but that's primarily on the aspect of the writing and the characters and things like that, which
yeah
is probably the weakness of Baldur's Gate 3, not because, like, if anything, it's carried by characters and character presentation more so than the actual writing.
yeah
Because narrative and character writing and such does get a bit hollow, does get a bit vapid, and there's moments of absolute brilliance, and there's moments of what the hell were you thinking, and then
yeah.
So
I think
that's where it becomes the hard part. But
yeah, I am the reception of that game, having put like actually let me look at my Steam and I can tell you exactly how many hours I put into it. Having put 14.4 hours into Baldur's Gate 3 as of October 16th in the year of our Lord 2023.
8% of my playtime.
Yeah, I think it's like good, but like I don't know. It's one of those games that just the way people talked about it, I expected it to be like, genre defining, and I'm coming out of it being like, yeah, it's good. Like yeah. I'm also like not having the, people are like the combat is so hard, and I'm like I am steamrolling everybody in this game. Like I'm not even
that if you think the combat in this is hard, I mean, you need to.
Of Baldur's Gate 1, walking into a forest, taking a step, and then instant game over because the basilisk looked at me.
Jesus Christ, dude, Baldur's Gate 1. But that's because you're a level
Baldur's
1.
Gate 1 basilisk. And basilisks in general. It's like, we opened the fight by trying to petrify you. Do you have a save? No, you're dead.
Yeah. And like even that, like I think that Divinity Original Sin 2 is harder. Like
Can be, probably, yeah. I'd say so.
Let's see.
5e, maybe it's just lack of familiarity with 5th edition D&D, because like I'm familiar with it, and then I look at this and go, yeah, this is easier to visualize, and I have some options and stuff, but I already know what's strong. I know how to break it, and how to do stuff like that. Maybe that has something to do with it, but then also in early access, the difficulty, there was only one difficulty setting, and it was probably where the tactical setting is now. So getting into it, let alone just on the balance mode, is like, holy shit, this is easy compared to what I'm used to. So
yeah, I'm playing on like whatever the medium difficulty is, because I'm playing it in co-op with a buddy, and he's like, like we should play it on balance, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like he's like, we're gonna play it multiple times. I was like, yeah, like we'll play it on like the regular difficulty, and then like on our next playthrough we'll do like the hard difficulty. But I don't know. Like again, I think for a lot of people, like it's their first CRPG or their first CRPG in a really long time.
Yeah, I mean there are not many, so
yeah, and certainly not which has the turn-based tactical aspect of it. Like again, it's not as common.
And so I get like that reaction to it, but again, it's one of those games where like I guess I'm reminded that my perspective is very different than a lot of people's, because I've seen a lot of this stuff before, and like Kris said, like I very familiar with 5th edition D&D. Like I go into combat and I'm like, cool, I'm going to kill this entire party in 2 turns. Like this is going to be easy, right? Like I know exactly what I want to do.
Consumables, powerful spells, cooldowns, you're dead.
Yeah, let me teach you about like I'm playing a ranger.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I like Rangers in D&D. It was like the first D&D class I ever played. And I like doing like Hunter's Mark, and then
Hunter's Mark is good in this game.
Yeah, like the aim shot ability where you sacrifice like 5 to your hit to add 10 on top of your damage. You just kill everything.
There's a like barbarian equivalent version of that ability.
Yeah, it's the reckless attacks or power attack or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I forget what it's called for ranger. I want to say it's like marksman or something like that. I don't remember, but
yeah, I'm not running with a
Something like
ranger,
that.
although I did for some time. So there was a while where like I had to run because of the guides that I was writing for GameSpot. I ran Tav as, which is not named Tav in my game because I actually did a continuation of a D&D character I actually made for tabletop D&D, which is
We just call him Tav. It is what it is.
yeah.
Tav Dirge or not.
Yeah. So, but I had Tav as a ranger for a little bit, because I had to do a character guide on stuff like that. So like
sharpshooter. It's called sharpshooter.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you so to everybody out there, if you're playing Baldur's Gate 3 and you're playing a ranger, you need to take sharpshooter.
Yes.
It is the single best ranger ability in D&D. And you will kill everything.
And you also need to be using Hunter's Mark.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yep. All the time.
Yeah. It is.
What else are you going to use your bonus action on? Do it.
For real, yeah.
Which is good, like, because that is the, like, you can just use that as like your concentration ability and then just do the other shit that you need to do, which is great.
Yeah. And you're not a heavy buff class like a cleric or whatever. You don't need to worry about, I'm already concentrating on something.
Yes.
Which
is great.
Mark is basically your choice.
Yes.
You kill him, you reapply it. Bonus action. Easy. Go.
It's real good, guys. But yeah, for games of the year, I feel like the big ones. God, I really need to.
Tears of the Kingdom are the big talking points, right?
I need to really make a list that doesn't just include the shit that I've played this year that came out last year, because Triangle Strategy is up there, but that's from last year, I think.
Yeah, last year.
But and then there is the big ones are like Season, World of Horror, Wild Frost, Street Fighter 6, Diablo 4, Disgaea 7, Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Sea of Stars, Goodbye Volcano High.
So here's my like hot take, right? Like this is my hot take for the year. I think that we're gonna remember this year, like we're in the middle of it. And it's like, wow, there's so much, it's so good. I think we're gonna look at this in the same way that we look at like 2013, where it was like, yeah, there was a lot of really good games that year, and like maybe 5 great ones. And I feel like that's how we're gonna look at this year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a hot take.
I'm reaching that point. Like,
yeah,
planning ahead for the game of the year stuff. The big thing I'm noticing is like there's a lot of games that everyone's talking about and big contenders, and these are very good and very good. And I'm sitting here and it's like none of these are moving the needle on my personal marks, right? Mm-hmm. Like I don't even know if any of these would like they might not even be top 20, let alone top 10 of my all times. Yeah, even the ones I really like, and it's just it's a weird feeling, Everyone's talking about how good it is. It's like, yeah, it is, but the individual highs are not the highest they could be.
That's a really interesting context to think about this as, is like, where would these rank on my all time? Because I think that does put a different filter on things. Like, I think that if we are looking at things in that lens, I think that games like, I think games like Sea of Stars or Goodbye Volcano High, where there like isn't really an analog, I think that gives them more weight. Like, I think Sea of Stars is definitely in my maybe top 5 RPGs ever, just based on mechanics only. I think it's really interesting. Good. Like it's extremely good. And while I think that the story is interesting, it falls down in certain aspects, but I think that cumulatively, the quality of life enhancements that game has, I mean, I want every subsequent RPG that is developed to learn from that game. Like, straight up.
I never want to play a classic Square Enix RPG ever again that isn't taking at least 80% of these into account. Because holy shit, guys.
Yeah, so like
they've done what you should have been doing in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So by that mark, it's like there are certain games that have come out this year that are like, I want this to be a sea change going forward, and while I think that you could look at Tears of the Kingdom that way, I think there are so few developers who could actually take those lessons to heart and actually implement them. Like, it's hard for me to be prescriptive with that, because so much of that is so difficult, and so many developers were like, how the fuck did you do this? You know what I mean?
And I'm still here picking through all sorts of mechanical faults in like how the stats work and the difficulty challenge, and how all of that just factors in and makes for an experience that isn't that great, and was kind of, I solved this combat issue in Breath of the Wild. What else you got? Nothing? Okay. You want me to fuck around and dabble in menus in order to make it interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Next, please.
Yeah, that's like, and we've talked about this before, and Brian, I don't know if Kris, if you and I have talked about this, but I would probably have at some point, maybe not like on the podcast or
maybe
anything,
in
but
passing,
yeah, definitely in text, where like, my thing is I'm a high highs guy, and I've said this over and over and over again. Like if you've ever talked to me about games or media in general, like I am here for highs. I'm not here for like good, right? Like I'm like good is fine, good is great, but like,
I'm not going to remember it as much.
Yeah, and I'm looking at like the games that I played this year, and I'm like, man, like, which one of these games like did I really like come out of it being like, this game fucking rules, right? And it's like Armored Core 6.
Somehow I knew that's where you were gonna go. It's like,
I still need to. That's one of the ones that Justin was telling me. Like when I was like, what do I still need to play?
Yeah,
Armored Core 6.
I'm probably
was
gonna pick it up if I get a minute in November, because like I feel like I can't come to our Game of the Year discussion if nothing else. I can't look you in the eyes, Will, and say any game is better without giving this one a crack. So,
yeah.
And as a FromSoft fan, like I feel like I definitely have an obligation to at least try it.
Yeah, so like like if you ask me right now, it's like that, or maybe Tears of the Kingdom. And it's different than I expected it to be, right? Like I expected Street Fighter 6 to be in there, and like the more time I spend with it, the less I'm like enthused with it. Like I'm just like, I played a lot of Tekken.
I still think it's great. Yeah,
it's really good. It's a really good game. This is not like a secret, but like I was out at Bandai Namco last week, like for 2 days, playing a lot of Tekken 8 for the IGN First that I'm doing this whole month, and I came out of that being like, yeah, please go check it out. We're running new articles like every other day.
Yeah.
But I came out of it being like, I like Tekken 8 way more than I like Street Fighter 6, and this game isn't even out. Like I'm having way more fun with it. Like I want to play it more. And like Mortal Kombat 1, I think is really good. I think it might actually be my favorite Mortal Kombat, but like, is it an all-time great fighter? Like I'd rather play Strive, So it's one of those things where I feel like that's a lot of stuff this year. Where like, yeah, I like Dave the Diver. Yeah, I thought Diablo. I mean, I actually really like Diablo 4.
And that'll be discussed at least.
Yeah, but like a lot of the stuff, I feel like, yeah, it's good, and like I said, like that reminds me of 2013, where we were like, oh my god, there's so much good stuff, and everybody goes back to it. Like, what do we remember 2013 for? BioShock Infinite and The Last of Us, realistically, for various reasons, right? But those are the two, and everything else is like, yeah, there was other stuff released that year that was quite good, but like that's what we remember. Like if you go back to
those are the standout ones. Both of those are overrated in their own ways. Like less so TLOU. I mean, I don't care for it as much. That's an own thing. But like BioShock Infinite, everyone's kind of turned around and gone, why did we think this so highly? There's been a massive turning point on that one. So funny that.
It's funny because there's been a bit of revisionist history about BioShock Infinite, and then there's also been like a counter to that like thing where it's like, oh, actually no, it is pretty good. But anyways, that's beside the point.
The fact that people are talking about it and discussing it back and forth means it's got something.
I've been meaning to go back and replay that to like actually like take my own temperature on that, but that's beside the point. I want to get back to what Will is saying.
Yeah, so like I guess like another example, like right, is like 2015, where it's like, oh man, 2015, and then it's like, what do people remember? Like The Witcher 3 and Metal Gear Solid 5.
Metal Gear Solid 5, fucking awesome.
Yeah, maybe the game of that generation, if we're being really honest.
Yeah.
I think it has a very strong argument. But like that's kind of what I'm feeling like this year, and we're just people are like, oh, there's so much, and I'm just kind of sitting here like, I want something to rip my head off. Like like there's so much, and it's becoming like this soup to me, where it's like, this is a good soup, right? But like I've been eating this soup for like, how when you like make like a big pot of soup, you got to eat it for a couple days. I've had a couple days of soup.
5 kilograms of really good soup.
Yeah, and I need a pizza, man. Like, I need something else. That's how
something with spice, yeah.
Something else, something like maybe a little bit sweeter, something with a little bit more of a flavor profile. Give me some Indian, give me some curry, right? And I feel like that's where I am this year, where it's like, man, all this stuff is really good, and like if I look at it in 5 years, my response is going to be like, yeah, I think the most fun I had playing stuff that year was probably I just played a bunch of Strive.
The game of the year for 2023 was butter chicken.
Yeah, like it was buttered chicken in a sea of Campbell's chunky chicken noodle soup. And there's nothing wrong with chicken noodle soup. I feel like, and this is like,
eat it 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Every once and again, you need to get some tandoori naan. Like, that's just what you need.
Yeah, you got to get something a little bit different. And I think this goes back to like a larger problem. And man, this podcast that is not like scheduled to be about anything has become about things suddenly is like like the kind of homogenization of almost everything, especially in like the AAA space, right? Like everything feels the same. And indies
is one of the reasons why I in recent years have been all about the indie space, because they're taking more risks, which leads to more interesting stuff.
But even then, I feel like indies are like kind of getting to that point too, right? Because like, what do in
some stances, yes, because like, yes, it's like, okay, Dotemu is a really good studio, but like they just did TMNT DLC. You know what I mean? It's like they're not doing, that is another IP or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a new indie game gets announced, right? Like 10-1, it's a Metroidvania, right? Like 10-1, it's a Metroidvania,
or like a 2D or 3D Souls-like,
or a deck builder, right? Like there's like those,
or it's a roguelike,
or it's a roguelike, and like that's awesome, but like I don't know, man. Like, and I'm gonna just use an example. Like I went to see, I go to the movies a lot, and this year I had the opportunity to go see Sorcerer in theaters, directed by William Friedkin back in 1977. And I'd never seen it, and I'd heard really good things. Because I like Friedkin, I like The French Connection, I like The Exorcist. I like some of his later career
I still need to see French Connection.
French Connection is so good. Great A. Gene Hackman performance. Also, like the car chase is real. It's crazy. But I watched Sorcerer, and I came out of Sorcerer, which is like this very intense movie. And if you don't know what Sorcerer is, I'll like very quickly, like it's about this group of 4 men, all of whom are on the run for various reasons. One of them is an embezzler, one of them is a hitman, one of them was a getaway driver who robbed the wrong mob, and the last one is
who's the right mob.
Yeah, like the guys who are gonna go after him, right? And one of them's a terrorist. And they are all in Veracruz, like kind of trying to run away from like the things that are chasing them. And they all desperately want to get out, and they don't have any money. And this oil well explodes, and they need dynamite to seal the oil well. But the only dynamite they have has not been turned over, so all the nitroglycerin has leaked out of the dynamite, which basically means if they move it at all, they risk it exploding. And they need to get it 200 miles to this oil rig. So the company
there's a bit of Lost that actually has to do with this.
Yeah, they got that from Sorcerer. So basically, they hire these 4 groups of guys that are like, we need you to put this in trucks and drive it 200 miles to get it to this rig.
Oof.
And basically, if they move the dynamite wrong, it will explode. And that is the film. And there is a scene that's very, very famous where they are trying to have this, big truck cross this bridge. It is torrential rain. Like the bridge is falling apart. The bridge is like doing this. There's this one scene where the truck just kind of does this because one guy's on the bridge, like trying to guide him across. The other guy's in the truck, and the truck just kind of does this. Very famous shot. But like I came out of Sorcerer being like, that is one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. And I want something like that for games this year, in a year where like everything is really good, and I want the bridge scene from Sorcerer. Like that's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, and even then, it's like,
why do I keep playing Morrowind this year? My God.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like,
yeah,
why am I? Yeah.
There are a lot of instances where I'm looking at even the game from the year before, like Triangle Strategy, and it's like, this is a refinement of Final Fantasy Tactics. You look at Dead Cells, or Dead Cells like Return to Castlevania. This is a refinement of Metroid and Castlevania. You look at Diablo. Oh, this is a refinement of Diablo. Street Fighter is a refinement of Street Fighter. Humanity is a refinement of Lemmings. You know, you get things like Tears of the Kingdom, which you could look at as being innovative, but also is kind of a refinement of Breath of the Wild. You know, the same thing with, Diablo, the same thing with Baldur's Gate to an extent. Like, Final Fantasy 16 is also like hybrid, like character action game, like, Devil May Cry, and also the Final Fantasy tropes. Sea of Stars is like an evolution with quality of life benefits of like classic RPGs. Like, so much of this is like, and even like a game that like emotionally resonated with me the most this year, Goodbye Volcano High, is also like, it's a lot like some of the classic Telltale games where it's just like you're
Telltale or Don't Nod or that kind of stuff,
or that sort of thing, where it's like you're managing relationships, you're doing like part of this stuff. It's like it's a mashup. So a lot of this, even though these are things, Disgaea 7 is just like splitting the difference between Disgaea 6 and like Disgaea 4 or something like that. So many of these games are just refinements of what has come before. There are only really a few that are different. And even so, like, I suppose you could look at Wild Frost as being like an expansion on the idea of like Slay the Spire or something. Or you could look, I think one of the most unique games that's come out is World of Horror. And even that like has very clear inspirations from Junji Ito and also H.P. Lovecraft, but it's in like a roguelike formula, which is something that's happened many times before, and also like an RPG formula, and also like a almost text-based adventure from like, the old times. So there is, this idea of like, there's nothing new under the sun, but I mean, there is also a degree of that's going on. And it is difficult to get excited. It's hard
to make anything truly new.
Yeah.
We understand that. But I get what you're coming from.
I think there are some who have gotten close. And I think that, I think that there is also something laudable in bringing something like Baldur's Gate 3, which is a CRPG, which has been done before, but bringing that to bear with a lot more fidelity, a lot more voice acting, a lot more high quality capture, so that there is a level of...
The presentation level is so high that anyone can
approach it. There's a level of emotional fidelity and performance fidelity that has not been seen before. So it is basically like we are taking the idea of Baldur's Gate 2 and presenting it within the modern technological landscape. And I think there is a degree to which you can credit that as like not revolutionary or innovative, but like some simulacra of that, like some idea of that, some percentage of that. But at the same time, like we are waiting for something that is new and novel, and there isn't that much of that. And so, like Will was saying, like there is a lot of this where it is like, yes, critically and, fuck commercially, like nobody cares, or at least we don't care. But like critically or ideologically, there are so many things that are excellent. There are so many things that are great, that are laudable, that are executing on what they try to do, on what they want to do really, really well. But when it comes to reinventing the wheel, there isn't that much. Obviously, studios are risk averse. And I think that when we are going to come across something new, it's only going to be new in a couple of ways. And that is somewhat, I don't want to say depressing because that feels too heavy-handed. But like there is a degree to which like we thirst for something like truly new, and there isn't that much. I think the last time I remember experiencing something really like that was like Inscription, and even that was, or like, you know.
And I'd played Pony Island, so
Yeah, I mean, I
already established.
I did too. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, that's, you know, or, you know, Doki Doki Literature Club, where it's like, this is just, it's not new. It's just a subversion of expectations, and it's difficult to, as critics in this medium, it's difficult to see so many that is just like, all right, we're gonna shave off the rough edges. We're going to refine what's good. We're going to leave what's bad behind until we like distill this into the purest form that it is, or that it could be in our current imaginings, and like present that, you know, like, you know, it's like when we have our GOTY episode last year, you know, we have the critics pick and we have the heart pick. Heart picks are flawed. Like they shoot for the stars and they miss a lot of times. Like a lot of times they totally fuck up shit. And they have real problems, but they try to do something different. Whereas like the critics picks would be like Forza Horizon 5, Hitman 3, where it's like, these are extreme refinements of things that have come before, but they don't actually offer anything new. It's just the best version of something you've seen before. And I think that's
version of a safe choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's laudable. I think that's great. I think that there are people out there who are pushing the envelope in their very specific genres or area of expertise. And I think that there is a different type of praise that should be given to those people as there is the trailblazers. But I just think we have far too few of those now, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
As somebody who
All
wants
these
to
games
experience
are
something
very
new.
little new is the problem, I think. And again,
Yeah.
it may just make the fact that, you know, there is so much of this good bland soup,
Yeah.
worse. Because like if it was a sparse year where we had half the game releases, then maybe it wouldn't feel so much like that. But it's like, no, we are inundated with new releases and things we need to check out. And always it's like we reach the point of this was pretty good.
Yeah.
We have reached like
That's it.
peak fine is what I'm going to call it.
Peak.
Like peak fine. We were at peak fine where like, and this is another thing. This is just like my personal take on it. Like, obviously, you know, I'm not here trying to like make anybody feel bad about liking a game. Right. But, like to me, like most games, I think that the worst thing I can say about a game is like, it's fine. Right. Like it's fine. It does everything it's
Damning with
do.
faint praise. Yeah.
Yeah. It does it pretty well. Like, but I'm not going to remember it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to remember Wanted Dead, which we talked about like a couple episodes ago, way more than most of the stuff that I played this year because it's weird.
Yeah.
It is better to be bad than okay, because at least then you're memorable. And that's
which
that's
is
a
like,
saying that
yeah,
I've
I mean,
come up a lot.
And that goes back to the like any press is good press type of idea of like, it doesn't matter what type of news there is. If you're notable, even if it's for shit, like that's fine. And I think that, you know, what you guys were talking about is like, so I have, you know, I do backlogged. I'm backlogged /U/Ribnax, right? So I have a list of all the games that I've played this year, and I have a list of all my favorite games this year. And if I look at it based off of what I think will actually stick with me, I could eliminate like 90% of this. You know, a lot of these games that I really enjoyed my time with, there's a difference between enjoying my time with and I'm going to remember it. Like Season, Goodbye Volcano High, like these types of games where like the game is saying something. Like there is a message. Season is like, we are all going to die, and it is really important what we share with the generations that come after us. Like, it's really important what our legacy is. And we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of how we preserve our culture for future generations. And what we choose to take with us, what we choose to own, what we discard, and what we leave behind. Like, that's really important. And Goodbye Volcano High is about leaving behind the fear of creativity, leaving behind your concerns and your, I guess, mortal fears for the creative process, for bridging gaps between people who feel and think differently from you, and all of these sorts of things. And those are important messages that transcend. And that's going to do more for me in like years from now when I'm thinking back than like whatever Diablo 4 was trying to say. You know what I mean? Like then more than what Final Fantasy 16 was trying to say, or Tears of the Kingdom, whatever that was about. You know,
I think it's honestly funny that you brought up Diablo 4 first, because I think Diablo 4 is very preoccupied, like story-wise, with the idea of legacy and what you leave to the next generation and how you make the world better or worse, depending on what you do.
It is, but I played it
about that.
It is, but I also played that like before the other games, and I've kind of forgotten about that because there are other games that kind of like didn't have the mechanical satisfaction that I got from Diablo 4, which became what the game was about for me. When like Goodbye Volcano High and Season are like, there's not really a gameplay hook to hang on to or hold on to, or like, you know, kind of immerse yourself in, and they're basically just the story. Like, so like obviously your mileage may vary, but like, you know, I think that is interesting. You know.
Yeah. I mean, you guys talked about like the last time like a game like really like, you know, stuck in your craw or whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it. For me, I think it was honestly like Outer Wilds.
Same, honestly. If not the most recent, that definitely was like, holy shit, that stuck with me.
Yeah, like to the extent that like, you know, I remember exactly when I played it. I remember like exactly what I was doing in my life when I was playing it. I remember like specific moments of playing that game, which I think is really rare for me. Like I remember, you know, this specific sequence of events.
I got to go back and try to push through the frustration that I had with that.
Yeah, I think you really should. I
really hated the flight mechanics. I was just like, fuck you.
I enjoyed it. I mean,
yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used
like,
to.
That's part of it. So yeah.
I think I got through like 2 planetoids, maybe 3. But yeah.
Like
I would definitely.
The moment I figured out how to get to the moon, the quantum moon, I'm like, holy shit, this is something special.
Yeah,
how that was done. I'm like, oh, that's so
wherever I got the last place that I think I played was like the place where there was sand all over the place, and there was a cave where there was a rock that was moving between 2 different places, and there were kids that were there or something like that. I don't know if that's the place that you're talking about.
Yeah. That's a different place. Yeah, that ties into what he's talking about. But.
Where I found a guy who was just like sitting out on the grass and like playing like a banjo or something.
Well, that's all the other explorers.
And I was just like, bro, what are you doing here? Things are falling to pieces.
Vibing.
What are you doing?
They're just vibing.
Yeah.
It's the end of the universe, bro. Just let them vibe.
Yeah, just honestly, yeah, it is the end of the universe. I don't know. I got to the end of that game and I just like I wept, you know, for like a good 5 minutes. I think it's a beautiful game, but like that was like the last time where I got, you know, to like where I sat down with something and I was like, I really, really, really. Aside from like
emotionally resonated with it.
Yeah. I mean, like obviously, like, you know, there's games that I'm going to be playing for a really long time. Like I will play Guilty Gear forever, and I have a lot of like, you know, emotional moments with that because of who I've played it with and what I've accomplished and things like of that nature. But it's a different kind of game.
The game. It's less the story it's trying to say. It's more just the experiences around.
That is an instance where it is what Will is bringing to the game, instead of like vice versa. Like you're not going to cry after playing the story mode of Guilty Gear Strive unless you are a maniac. If you love seeing somebody get smacked in the face with a 50-foot statue of Abraham Lincoln, sure, yeah, play Guilty Gear Strive story mode. But
in fairness, that was a beautiful moment.
That was a really funny moment. I mean, I will say, I think that there is more weep-worthy moments in the DLC to Strive's story. Like in the whole, like in the Delilah story, like there were definitely more emotional moments in that than there were in the like main game for sure. But
I haven't played that yet.
But yeah, like and that is like there's a degree to which like Goodbye Volcano High is that for me. Like as somebody who has been a musician for a long time, but who also is like going out and exploring like what it is to be a vocalist, what it is to be a frontman, what it is to like write lyrics and sing them in front of people, what it is to like expose your soul and your thoughts and your feelings and your like inner life to the masses and things like that. Like there is a degree to which Goodbye Volcano High is just going to resonate with me more than it probably does. I don't know if I would say many other people, but like I feel like the situation with that is like very specifically resonant with me now. So like other people may not vibe with that to the degree that they do with something like Outer Wilds, but like, yeah, that is going to stick with me for a while. Like I am going to think about Fang in the future. I am going to think about, you know, these characters and their relationship and their band and that sort of a thing. So, you know, to each their own.
And you know, I guess like, cause like, I think Baldur's Gate 3 was what like put us on this point, and I'm not done with it, right? Like I'm not done with it. I do think, you know, people are going to be like, oh, Will hates Baldur's Gate 3. No, I think Baldur's Gate 3 is a very good game. But I am wondering, like, if I get to the end of it, if I'm going to be like, you know, have I been on an emotional journey, or if I'm going to get to the end of it and like, you know, put it on my backlog and give it like 4 stars and be like, yeah, it was a really good RPG. I had fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
honestly wouldn't be surprised either way. Yeah, I feel like one is more likely than the other, but yeah.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, maybe it does get to that point. And like right now, I'm like, yeah, this is really good. Like I'm having a good time. Like I'm enjoying these characters, but I don't know. I want some curry, man.
Yeah.
I'm resonating with everything that's being said by both of you here, and just pondering the whole situation more myself. It's just, I wonder if it's just a writing thing for me in particular, because like so many, just to lead into this, let's say there's a lot of games I've played recently where the writing will get its hooks in. I'm invested in the story. Okay, cool. I'll play it out. Something happens. It fucks up. It drops the ball. It fails the landing or whatever. I'm just sitting there going, fuck. And then I'm just sitting there, it just like kind of derails the entire experience. And this has happened to me. Like the one that I will never shut up about is obviously Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker expansion. You went from the highest high that game has ever had, and possibly that franchise has ever had, to whatever the hell Endwalker is. And it's not good, and I will be crucified and, you know, for ever saying bad about that. But like, y'all are in denial, guys. Criticizing the game will help. You can't just you can't just sit there and say it's fine while your game is dying. Please stop. That's a tangent again. Yeah, but the problem is it just like it derailed everything that I liked about the story, tossed all the writing conventions and consistency that had been there out there, damaged a lot of characters in the process, and just made me feel shit about the whole thing. And then while I was still recovering from that, I then played Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Same thing happened. That game was great and getting better and better and better. And then it hits the high point and then just kind of peters out. And then the ending is dumb and terrible and just ruins everything. I'm sitting there going, why? What was the point of all this? This is none of this. Yeah. And that's just become a recurring thing. More and more games keep doing that. It's like they get the ball rolling, they get the hooks in. It's like, all right, cool. And then the writing can't maintain itself. It can't stick the landing. And then it just tanks the whole thing for me. And now I'm just sitting here going, I want something well written. I want one of these stories to just take me through to conclusion and be satisfying. And part of why I think Diablo 4 resonated with me is that campaign did exactly that. I was waiting for them to shit the bed or pull out the Diablo card or just have a really sappy, happy ending or something like that is completely antithetical to it. No, ended on a great note. Really perfect, bittersweet victory, but kind of thing. And just never betrayed the characters, never betrayed their motivations and such. Like, this is great. This is a solid fucking story. And this is what I want more of. And more games, either, and obviously, you know, games are games, right? You need the gameplay element. You need that kind of thing to it. I'm not going to, you know, shed a tear if Armored Core's story doesn't end up being awesome, because that's not necessarily what I'm there for. If it is, great.
Absolutely. We're here.
It is actually quite good.
We're here for the tear-jerking story.
Yeah. Look, dude, I am here
to
bunker a robot.
Can love blossom between two robots on the battlefield? Will we need to know.
I will say, I think, and I agree with Kris, right? I think like the reason that I vibe with Diablo 4 so much, and it's not because like I am here to like click, pick up loot. I mean, that can be fun for a while.
To be super clear. Like, we did a spoiler cast and full beat by beat story discussion. I was super into it. Like, it is not a criticism of Diablo 4. It is just like where I am at right now. Like, looking back on the year. Yeah. And I may fully be like forgetting like the impact that it had on me at the time or whatever. Like, my mind is a sieve sometimes. So apologies if I'm for like forgetting something.
No, Brian. This is not like a criticism of what you said. This is just like I'm talking about like where I was with it, right? And I go back to like it, and I think about like certain parts of that story, and I'm like, man, that was really good. Like, I love the ending.
And you've also spent a lot more time with it than either of us, I think, because you've been working on it as well.
So,
yeah, I've beaten that campaign 2 or 3 times, and I've done the seasonal stuff. New season starts tomorrow, actually, I don't know, like Kris has heard me say this before, and I know Brian has heard me say this before, but I have a saying, and it goes back to Mass Effect 3 that kind of like picked up around like conversations I was having with friends when Mass Effect 3 came out, and people got to the ending and they were like, what the fuck is this shit? To say that in the nicest possible way. But it came up with some friends, and we kind of came to the conclusion that like the journey is great. Like, people convince themselves that they love the journey, right? And that's fine and that's fair. But
people convince themselves that they love Journey.
Yeah, but like
Journey rules.
Journey is actually like I actually quite like Journey.
Both game and band Journey rules.
Yeah. But for me, and I think Kris, this is probably what you're talking about a little bit. Like, it doesn't matter how good the journey was if you end up at the top of shit mountain, and
that final experience and feeling you walk away from will color the expectations.
Yeah.
Like,
and you end up at the top of shit mountain a lot. Like,
yeah, and it doesn't have to be a great ending. It just has to be good, and even that is a struggle for a lot of these. Right? Like, the best moments of games that I adore are not the ending, typically. But as long as the ending is good or as satisfying, then I can walk away with that feeling. And then as I reflect back on it, I don't have to get, because anytime now I think of Xenoblade 3, I sit there and go, oh, that fucking ending. Man, Chapter 6 was really fucking great. That was great. Oh, that ending. It's like, whereas something else is like Disco Elysium ended really well. I'm like, cool. Now I go back and think of the things because I don't have that hurdle that I got to overcome to go think of it backwards. It's like, yeah.
And there's also like that famous quote that is attributed to Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And the last lingering impression that you leave with people is how they will feel about it. Like, you can give them the greatest journey, but the final story beats and the ending is what people will feel as they leave the theater with a movie, as they shut down their computer or their console or whatever, if you are playing the game or whatever. And a bad ending will just leave a terrible taste in people's mouths. A good ending can cover a multitude of sins, but how often are you going to stick through a game that's not really doing it for you to see a great ending that's at the end of something that like you didn't vibe with? Like, you're going to leave before then. So it is most often that what we experience are endings that don't really satisfy the things that have come before, instead of vice versa. So that is one thing that I have been very aware of as we have played through like the various things that we've played through this year. And I mean, and honestly, any year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like, to Kris's earlier point, like a lot of the stuff, and to Brian, what you just said, like a lot of the stuff that we remember is like, how we felt at the end of stuff. And it's hard for me to remember like how I felt during the process. And this goes to like I'm going to pull out some, like, I have an MFA grad school, like theory. Like there's a piece of theory called the rhetorical transaction. And as you engage with something, you are building meaning as you engage with it, right? Like as you were watching a movie or reading a book or playing a game. And, you constantly change it until you get to the end, right? And then you have like a meaning, right? And that sense of meaning that you build becomes the work to you. And so it will be different for every person because that's the thing that you built, right, internally.
It's a more academic version of people will remember how you feel.
Yeah. I'm trying to explain the why.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And I'm fascinated to hear it.
So, like, because you're building that meaning, right, and you're constantly having to reevaluate, you think like, oh, this will happen, and then it doesn't, and then you're like, wait, did I misread like these other clues? Like, where did I mess up, right? But really, there's only two ways that the story can go, right? Like, the phone rings and you pick it up, or the phone rings and they don't pick it up, right? But like, once that happens, the other option is closed off. And so like this idea,
if you're a fan of quantum physics, this is known as collapsing the wave function.
Yeah. And so I think about like stuff like that in relation to like how we feel about stories, and specifically how we feel about like the endings of certain stories. Like I think about the ending of Neuromancer all the time. I think about the last line of that book because it makes me feel things. It has I won't spoil the last line. But it has like, it's the same way I think about like the end of Moby Dick, right? Like the last line of Moby Dick, where it's like this beautiful, like really haunting image that is like, the end of a long journey. In a lot of ways, it's very sad, but also like there was some good that came out of it. Right? It's hard to describe without like talking about those books, and like obviously people know the ending of Moby Dick, but if you haven't read Neuromancer, I really really suggest that you do read it. And
I'm gonna be real, I don't actually know 100% that I've read Moby Dick.
I mean, the whale wins. Everybody dies except Ishmael. That's the story.
Nice.
And the last
line
line
leads you nowhere. That's the point.
Yeah, the last line is something about they come across this other ship during the hunt for Moby Dick called the Rachel, who is looking for lost members of the crew because they were also hunting Moby Dick, and they ask Ahab to help, and Ahab says no. And so
interesting.
The Pequod sinks, and everybody dies except Ishmael, and he is sitting in the water, and I'm going to butcher the last line, but it's the best of my recollection. He says something along the lines of, he sees a sail, and it's the Rachel who, in search of her lost children, found only another orphan. Beautiful line.
Yeah.
But like, that's the last thing that you get when you read Moby Dick. And, that like colors the whole perception, right? And it's the same thing with like the last line of Neuromancer, or the last scene in any film that like has a really emotional ending. And I think that, Kris's point, like that stuff is really hard to do. And it's even hard to end a story well. Like endings are the hardest parts, I think, as someone who like writes fiction and has been published.
When you brought that up and you were talking about like the endings, the thing that immediately came to mind, and I have no idea if this has any bearing on what you're trying to say, was the ending to Inception. Where it's just like, this is just like, this could be a good thing. This could be a bad thing. This could be literally nothing. And it just like the idea that like, I thought about that. Like I think about that spinning top, you know what I mean? Like that's meaningful.
And then there's more to it, is that it doesn't even matter if the top is spinning or not. The point is he's not looking at it.
Yes.
Yeah. People talk about that ending a lot, and I thought it was really interesting. People are trying to figure out, like, is it real? Is it a dream? And the thing that people don't talk about, which is what Kris says,
he's not
like,
looking at it.
He doesn't care.
It doesn't matter. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him anymore.
That's funny, because I did not think about that until you just brought that up. Because I was like, and there's a degree to which like, and I mean, man, we are getting deep into philosophy, but like the ending is the ending that I want because that's the ending that I need it to be, and there is a degree to which many games don't actually provide us with enough room to take things where we need them to be. And like, whether you want to consider that to be a weakness of the medium, a cowardice on the development staff or the publisher,
we don't just
whatever.
want to have a hard end to your playtime,
Yeah, like the
story is over, but you can still go do the side quests.
You literally could have ended Mass Effect 3 before the choice and been like, what do you think he did? You know what I mean? Like, you could have had an Inception level ending of being like,
and anything you imagine is better than what we got.
Yeah, I mean, but like, there's a degree to which like that ambiguity isn't really what video games truck with. Like, there's a degree to which I think that is actually the medium's weakness, and that I think that I don't think that I can count it to the medium as a strength, but I think that I can say I have half a mind to say that it doesn't matter, but also I want it to matter. I don't know how you guys feel about this. And also, we are so deep into this discussion.
But it's great. I'm loving this.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, we've talked about Diablo 4 a lot on this podcast, but I think Diablo 4 actually has one of those endings, right? Where you can...
I'm still thinking of the last words, basically. That letter. It's just like, that was great. That was a great finish. I read that letter, quote for quote, in our deep dive, because I'm like, yeah, this is a good way to end it.
Right.
And I will agree with you if there is no DLC that explores that and like actually fleshes that out. If that's literally just like the last thing we get in this story.
If there is no, Mephisto DLC.
Exactly. And if Diablo 5 has nothing to do with this, then like I'm right there with you, but I don't believe that.
And this is the issue of ongoing series, and when do you leave enough alone? Like, what is the pro and con of your story ending, of your series ending,
Yeah.
Like, an example I always bring up is if there is never a Devil May Cry 6, that is a great point to leave it off. But man, it would suck if there's never a Devil May Cry 6 to further explore the gameplay aspects of it,
Yeah.
Like, it's a struggle, and it's
but even then,
unique to games.
And a great thing about that is that we could literally have Capcom come out and be like, Devil May Cry 5 is the canonical ending to the series. We're coming out with Devil May Cry 6, but it's placed before Devil May Cry 5. So like we can carry forth the gameplay ideas, but like that story ending is going to be what we leave off with. And then you can have both. You can have both the gameplay catharsis.
That can also retroactively negatively affect the story if you go, well, why didn't this factor in previously?
Which is also true. Which is also
true. Not every
true.
prequel is Yakuza 0,
Yes.
I'm going to call this the Uncharted 4 problem. Why did we never hear about Nate's brother before this moment, right? Like
no, and so my understanding of that, like just to address the micro question there, my understanding is he thought his brother was dead this whole time.
Right, but if I had a sibling, right, and my sibling was dead, like I'd probably talk about my dead brother every now and then.
Fair, but like also like I don't know, maybe the shape that his sorrow has formed is that we don't fucking talk about oh my god, what was his name?
Troy Baker.
We don't talk about Troy Baker.
We don't talk about Troy Baker.
We don't mention Troy Baker in this house.
Sam is the guy's name. But on the other hand, like you can do that same thing, right, and have it work really well. Like I'm thinking of like StarCraft 2, right? Like Tychus Finley is not a character.
Yeah.
Free Wings of Liberty, and he's one of the best parts about that game. And like he makes the characters more interesting by virtue of him being there. Like he makes Jim Raynor a more interesting character.
Yeah,
how you interact with him.
But he was just like some guy before then, right? Like that isn't like a plot hole that he wasn't like mentioned earlier because he was just some dude, right?
Well, I mean they know each other, but like I think part of the reason StarCraft gets away with it is also because of like the way that game tells its story. Like StarCraft and Brood War especially is like a lot of it is mission briefings, right? You're not going to have Jim sit there and talk about, I remember my buddy Tychus, right? You just don't have time.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of the stuff in StarCraft is like hinted at and not necessarily directly explained, which goes into the idea of like maybe not telling you everything is good. But like you can do that, right? You can have that ending that works. I think Wings of Liberty actually has like a very nice ending where you can kind of get out of it whatever you want before they retroactively made the series worse. With like Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void. I think
completely agree.
Yeah, I think Brood War actually does the same thing. Like I think Blizzard is actually quite good at this. But which is something I haven't really thought about until right now, but that explains why I like so many of their endings. At least in the earlier stuff.
I adore Brood War, so I can talk about that for
I don't remember. It's been so fucking long since I've played Brood War. I don't even remember anything about it.
Brood War's ending cinematic is really good. It's really
the entire Lost campaign and how it goes and how Kerrigan's ambitions and plans and everything come through and all the characters, act logically in accordance to what they would do, even if it means, manipulation and deceit and being horrible bastards. And it's so fascinating where everything ends up and the villain wins, and you're kind of like, this is the only way it really
could have ended
for her character. You know? Like,
yeah. Brood War is really good. and really, 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 really well written.
For sure.
But I think, yeah, like, I think it's good to. I call this, like, a friend of mine when I was in grad school. We called this like the Bolaño ending. Roberto Bolaño is one of my favorite authors, Chilean. He died fairly young. He was like 50, but he had a massive impact on literature. And he wrote a short story that I'm going to recommend to everybody if you like short stories, called Last Evenings on Earth. And it ends in like a very ambiguous way that is very interesting that you can think about it. And I used to teach it when I was teaching, and I would ask, my students, like, why does it end this way? Right. Like, because people, I'm sure, want the answer to what happens next, because it ends in a very interesting place. And, the answer that a lot of them eventually come up with is it doesn't matter anymore what happens next. Right. Like, we've got the emotional catharsis of the story. And I wish games were more like willing to get you to that point of emotional catharsis and then stop.
Yeah, it is okay to stop playing at this point.
Yeah, and be like, you know what, that's it.
And I think, again, like going back to Outer Wilds, like, that's it. It's like, yeah, you're done. You're good. It's all done here. Just sit back, think about that, because holy shit.
Yeah. And I think, like, like, you can have those moments of like that thing. And, obviously I get letting people go back and, like, doing the rest of the collectibles and whatever. And I think you can also have the story do those things and end in a way that's satisfying and maybe not wrapping up every loose end, while also letting people be like, I can go back, right, and finish my stuff. So it's hard. I wish, I think it's an interesting discussion, because I do think we've gotten to the point where we like feel the obsessive need to wrap everything in a nice little bow. And
but not only that, just not doing that very well, because the involvement of writers is downplayed in games and game stories and such. There isn't enough emphasis on it. Like, writing in general is just downplayed in a lot of mediums, right? They're like, who cares about writing or whatever? Look at the pretty visuals and, whatever in latest X movie or Disney movie or whatever. It's like, who gives a fuck, right? But it's like, this is a cornerstone. Your castle is built on this. If your foundation is sand, it's going to sink. And this is happening. We're seeing more and more diminishing returns in things like, Marvel movies, going back even further to discussion. That it's like, there isn't enough emphasis or focus on the writing, not enough care or concern given. It just becomes a factory line product, and then all of it falls apart. But you can get away with a factory line product that has really well written stuff, because, again, it is your foundation. And I feel like it's just not enough focus on the writing aspect. And again, this is probably just me being biased as a writer. Who knows? But, like, there's not enough focus of that in creative mediums in general, aside from, obviously, books. And, well, that industry's not going so great either, is it?
Publishing's actually doing fairly well, believe it or not.
Well, no, fair enough.
What's doing fairly well?
Publishing, like traditional publishing.
That's good.
It
wasn't when I was studying it, because everyone's like, "Oh God, doom and gloom." This was like 15 years ago, so this is a while back.
Yeah, it's gotten better. I think like it's one of the reasons I really encourage people to, like, watch really good television, or, like, good film, or read more. Like, I think about
the horizons.
Like, expand your idea of what good writing is and can be, and what good storytelling is and could be. I think about the ending of The Wire constantly. I think about the writing in The Wire constantly, because
everyone tells me that I need to watch it. I'm desperate to do so.
Yeah, it is.
I've only seen like the first 2 episodes.
Yeah,
something like that. It's quite good.
Everyone says it's like peak TV, and it's like, well,
I think The Wire is probably the best television show ever made. It is really, really smartly written, really, really well acted. Like, I don't know if you could make it today. Like, it deals with some, pretty fucked up stuff. But it's very honest. Like, it never, like, it never cheats you. Stuff in The Wire happens because, you get to the end and you're like, that's the only way that could have happened. But I think about that a lot, because it, obviously it respects its characters, but, like, a lot of bad stuff happens. Like, a lot of people die. Like, it's not a happy story. But
which is one of the reasons why I haven't, like, dove straight into it, is because, like, I mean, Will knows about this. Like, I've been going through some stuff. So like the idea of spending more time in like depressing stories is not super appealing to me. But at the same time, like, we're talking about reading, we're talking about watching, we're talking about kind of consuming valuable things. I recently read this book called, I think the name of it is 4,000 Weeks. But it is very very important, I guess I would say. It's about like life prioritizing, because we only have on average about 4,000 weeks to live. And it's about what that means for us. And so the idea of like demanding more or expecting more from the things that we choose to spend our limited time on is important. And it's a sobering thing that people don't often think about, but like, how many summers do you get? How many winters do you get? How many days do you get? How many Saturdays do you have? And that answer is different for everybody. But the pursuit of artistic beauty is one of the things, and the creation of that for artists is one of the things that makes life meaningful and makes life worth living. And that's one of the reasons why the three of us and the other co-hosts on this podcast who have come before, that's one of the reasons why we do the things that we do, is because life has a lot of suffering in it. Life has a lot of pain in it, but it's also really beautiful. And there are things that we can experience that are like nothing else. And this medium may have its shortcomings, and game development may be toxic, and games journalism may be in a state. But
to say the least,
it's a nice way of putting it.
But there are also things that games can show us, that games can help us to experience, that are not able to be experienced in any other way during our time on this planet. And
it is a unique medium, and more games and people with it should try and use that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Not always, they don't always do it. Sometimes it's just for, there's nothing wrong with having a good playable game, sure.
Yeah.
It's like what will always stick out to me is the games that do something more with it.
Yeah.
Like
Mario Wonder is not going to tell me something new about the human experience, but it's going to be really fun, and that has its own value.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would settle for a few more games that were willing to try to shoot for the ending of Metal Gear Solid 3 and force me to pull the trigger myself.
Yeah.
Like I go back to that one a lot too, right? Because like you don't want to. You sit there in that moment. You don't want to, but that's what
or the Last of Us. The ending of the last, I know that, Will is not a huge fan of that. I think that the ending moment, one of the moments in the ending of that is like, I don't want this to happen.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the best parts of that game, to be honest with you.
I think that and everything that comes after it is gold.
Yeah, honestly. I think that like it takes a little bit of time to get there sometimes, and the stuff that it does on the way to that point is not always great, but I do like the ending.
Yeah.
And I think that last moment of like, again, like, let the audience draw their own conclusions. Don't give us a definitive answer, which is why I'm like vehemently against the idea of a sequel to that game.
Yeah.
I think and I still haven't played the sequel. People have told me it's really great. I'm sure it is.
I personally think it's better than the first game, but I also, I am also on record multiple times saying The Last of Us did not need a sequel. Like, it would have been totally great without a sequel.
Yeah, I just
have played it. I've studied it hard enough.
Yeah.
I've seen people play it. I know what happens, but I'm also just like, nothing about this to me is like as interesting as that last moment.
Yeah.
And I think like, we need to let games have interesting last moments instead of like doing other things where it's like, oh, we can continue this or we can expand upon it, or like, sometimes just let it be,
And honestly, I think that if they make a Last of Us Part 3, like
They're going to 100%. It makes too much money.
Yeah, it makes too much money. But it just because it hasn't been announced, I'm just gonna frame it in
Well, they
this
have to
way.
remaster The Last of Us 2 first.
A game with two entries, but 5 games. But like, if they make a Last of Us 3, like it can't end in a way that's more resonant than the ending of Last of Us 1. Like, surely. I can't, because if they do, like, anyways, but that's neither here nor there, and that's not what, Will or Kris was trying to say, so I apologize for, butting in with that.
No, it's all good. I get it.
No.
It's an interesting discussion we had.
But that is something that I've been thinking about. There are very few things that we get to do with our time. And part of our job, Kris and Will and myself, part of our job is to launder experiences through ourselves and tell you what is worth your finite time on this planet. That is part of the sacrifice that we have made. We will play stuff on the off chance that it is good. And if it is not good, then we have just spent our limited time on this earth playing something that is not that good. But if we do find something good, yeah.
And that's the thing. We can still use it to say, why is this not good? How can this be better? What is good in comparison? Why does this work and this doesn't? There is use in even a bad experience if we're willing to let it. And that's why I feel these discussions are important. Even for, games we may not necessarily like or do like. It's like, what does this stick with us? Why?
Yeah. Criticism is found in contrast. And there are a lot of things that have sucked that we have played, and part of our job in playing all of these things is not just to play things and be like, oh, that was fun. It's like, why? Like, we have to delve into, why is that good? Why is this bad? What does this say about the other things that exist? What can we take forward? What do people need to learn? That's why we can play things like Sea of Stars and be like, people need to learn from this. Mm-hmm. This is taking a classic formula that has been with us since even before the NES, but was definitely popularized with the first Final Fantasy on NES. Like, this formula has been in place since the 80s, and for 40 years, it has been the same, basically. And now we are getting way more engaging, way more active combat, and that can make this genre way more fun, way more engaging. It can give us new opportunities to tell different types of stories. It can bring new people into the genre. Like, there are so many things that, and I don't know why, I don't know how we got here, but like,
we didn't have anything to talk about.
But this is something that I take. This is something that I take very seriously. Like, this is something that I take seriously. This is why I made this show.
Mm-hmm. This is why I want to keep being on this show. This is the kind of thing. This is why I stick with this entire idea of, games criticism and media and such. This is what I want to do. This is straight up. This particular podcast episode has been one of the better experiences because this is what I want to do. I want to delve into this medium, into what it means, what it can bring forth, what it does and doesn't do well, how we can improve it, how we got here, all of that. I want to explore that. I want to dive deeper into it, and I want to see it, grow, and it and all other artistic mediums and everything from this. Like, what can all of this learn? And that's a place that is very hard to, in games media and such. Most places don't have room for that. Like, this is a kind of, the long form editorial prestige article or whatever that is like basically now relegated to video essays on YouTube. You don't see this on most websites, or you manage to sneak it in as bylines in between your guides and reviews and whatever else. It's like, but this is what I want to do. This is
the good stuff
I aim to do. Yeah. And this is what more people, I feel, should at least be considering or discussing. Maybe not everyone is going to or interested in going in as hard or in as in depth and with as many games as we do, but like, if this is what I'm going to spend my life doing, I might as well make it meaningful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going into the whole 4,000 weeks thing, it's like I wanted to at least see how far I can get it.
Yeah.
What can I do with this? And here I
I
am. So
I have 3 things I want to say, and then I think I might leave it with those 3 things because I think hopefully that they will
wrap it
get
up.
the
Yeah.
get to the point that I want to make across. The first thing is, Brian talks about the 4,000 weeks. I think about that a lot. Like it was one of the first things that I would teach my students when I was teaching writing was I would have them read an essay by Thomas Lynch called The Undertaking, which I highly recommend. If anybody wants to read that essay, let me know. I'll send you a copy of it. But Lynch is an undertaker, and he wrote about, what do you do with the dead, right? What do you do with them after? How do we deal with this? What is the meaning of our lives because of the way that we deal with the dead? It's a great essay. I won't spoil it, but I think about that a lot, and it's part of the reason that some friends of mine have joked. They're like, Will doesn't really play bad games. Will doesn't really watch bad media very much. And I'm like, yeah, because listen, I only have so much time, and I think you have to be aware that a lot of your
Choosy moms choose Jeff.
yeah, you gotta be choosy, right? Like your life is an alarm clock, and you don't know when the wake up timer is.
Yeah.
Like everybody has a set amount of time, and you don't know when the alarm's going to go off. So you got to think about that. The second thing is that, I think this kind of stuff is obviously really important, and I'm glad that we're able to do it. And I hope that, people will be more willing to look at things through that lens of not just, is it good? Is it bad? Is it fun? But like what I get out of it. What is it saying? What is the artistic thing here? And I think finally, like if we talk about, oh man, I might have actually lost my third thing. That was a shame. It was really good too. It was really good. What were we talking about?
There it is, everybody.
What were we talking about? If we get back to the
expression medium,
oh
exploring
yes,
the medium,
yes,
the good and
yes,
the bad.
Yeah,
yes,
we
yes,
got
yes.
it.
I remember. And it actually kind of reminds me of one final thing. When I was in grad school, and we would have workshops, right? You'd write your story or whatever it was, your novel excerpt, and you'd submit it. And a week later, everybody would read it. And sometimes you'd get torn apart, and sometimes you'd get very lovely, glowing feedback, and sometimes a little bit of both. And the thing that I think I learned the most out of that was A, how to be a better writer, but B, also, when you do criticism, when you give feedback on something, even if you don't like the thing, it's valuable because you're learning about what you value.
Yeah.
Right. Why do I like this? Why does this appeal to me? Why am I emotionally engaged with this aspect and not this one? Right. And then as you begin to understand those things about yourself, it helps you, A, as a critic, and B, if you go into a creative field, like it helps you with that because you understand like, oh, this is the thing that matters to me. And this is why. And I am now able to articulate it better to the people who I want to talk to about it. So I think, if we have a duty to like do anything as critics or as like people who care about, art, it's that, art is a process and a journey, and it takes a long time, and you fail a lot and you get better at it, and you fail some more and you get better at it, and sometimes you get worse. And criticism is like that too, and the art that you interact with is going to also be like that. And I think the most important thing to do is to kind of open yourself to the idea that maybe that's good and not a bad thing when things are imperfect, because a lot of times we talk about like, oh, this thing is so great, it doesn't have flaws, but a lot of the greatest things are flawed in some way, and that's part of what makes them good.
Edges can make them so much more interesting.
Yeah. Like we talk about like a lot of great books or great films or great games or whatever. Like a lot of them have flaws. Like they're not these perfect sanded things that have been focus tested until you've beaten the interesting ideas out of them. So I guess the last thing that I want to say is, be willing to play those weird things, be willing to like write the weird thing, be willing to do the weird thing, and be open to the idea that there is something to be learned in the weird and the imperfect, because that's where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is like, you know, the core idea behind the platformers game of the year, like heart pick, is like there is the idea, you know, the critics pick, which is like, this is the game that is without flaw. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is a game that is trying to say something. It could just be like the current pinnacle of the iterative cycle of this genre or whatever. Whereas the heart pick is like, this is something that was shooting for something, you know.
This is brilliant, but I like this.
Yeah. You know, like this is really laudable for, and it's not to take anything away from people who try to, there is like, if you've not seen it, I highly recommend watching Jiro Dreams of Sushi, which I don't know if that's still on Netflix, but like the idea that like Japanese culture and food making and the you know, the food prep industry, or, you know, the food service industry is like, this guy, Jiro, and his son and the people that have taken over for him are interested in one idea and one idea only. And it is to create the supreme sushi experience. And that is literally all he cares about. Everything that he does is, where can I get the best fish? What process do I have that gives the best sushi experience? Like, what can I do to make people who come to my restaurant have the best sushi that they have ever had in their lives? And there's a degree, the pursuit of perfection in a singular column, in a singular vertical. What can IO Interactive do to make Hitman 3 the best immersive sim assassination simulator that exists? And I feel like they did an exceptional job. Hitman 3 is an amazing game. It's really, really great. It isn't really trying to say anything. It is about the pure pinnacle of gameplay. And there is definitely a place for that. And I feel like Nintendo is also in there, where like, I imagine that Super Mario Wonder is going to be a transcendent experience from just a pure gameplay perspective. I'm not expecting to be challenged by my ideas of like right and wrong or the human experience by what's going on with Princess Peach in that game. Like, I'm just not. Like, that is not what I get from them.
There's value in the mechanical experience, though.
Yes. And but that is this is something where, like, I mean, this is why the critics pick and the heart pick came about, is like, there is praise that is deserved with that. And there is also praise in going off the beaten path and saying, I have an idea and I don't know if it's going to work. And it doesn't always work. But I really want to make a game that is half room escape and half bullet hell shooter. And I want to see if I can do it. And then they came out with Eurokill. And it's a really interesting game, and it has its problems, but it's weird, and you will never play anything like it. I want to make a game that's half dating sim and half Qbert. And then you come out with Catherine. And it's like, this is really weird, and you'll never play anything like it. And that novelty is valuable. And games like The Outer Wilds and like Goodbye Volcano High are valuable for their emotional statements, or for their very human statements, or like the 4,000 Weeks thing. Like, your time is fucking limited. Be aware, like Memento Mori, remember your death. It is going to happen. And what you choose to do with your time is meaningful. And that is something that your mileage may vary. You may be satisfied with just wandering to playing whatever it is that you want. You may be fine not questioning or interrogating these sorts of things. But for the people who want to go deeper, for the people who want to ask more, I think that is a worthwhile pursuit. And that is one that I am happy that I, and by extension my co-conspirators and co-hosts, have decided to dedicate ourselves to. And we hope that you agree. And we hope that you get something from this and from both our sacrifice and our triumphs. And this feels like a discussion that probably should have happened at like episode 300 instead of 290. But
hey,
you know what?
Plenty of time. This is a warm-up round.
This is a warm-up round.
Besides, to say something just, slightly more positive after all that, just remember, time you enjoy wasting, it's not wasted time. Remember.
Very true. Very true. There is nothing wrong with enjoying yourself. And don't let whatever society you are a part of guilt trip you out of enjoying the time that you have and making you feel like you have some obligation to run in some hamster wheel on, other people or society or whatever's benefit. Because ultimately, man, we're just getting really into it. Ultimately, your job isn't going to be that your employer is not going to be there on your deathbed.
Nobody's there on their deathbed saying, I wish I worked harder. That's
yeah.
the saying.
And I will, say the thing that I used to tell my students, like, you're going to die. It's going to happen. And it might seem like it's really far away right now, but when it gets here, it's not going to seem like it was that far away. So you'd better be like, sure, every day that you're waking up and you're spending your time how you want to, because you don't get do-overs.
Yeah.
You get October 16th, 2023 once.
Yep.
And,
I would tell there's a lot of time loop games out there.
That's true. But until somebody figures out to put me in a time loop, you get it once. And that was the same thing I told them with their work, right? Like, you get to do most things once. Make sure that you're doing, the stuff that you want to be doing. If you put your name on something, make sure you're proud of it. And if you're spending your time a certain way, make sure that you're not going to look back on it in 5 years and be like, holy shit, I wish I'd done something else. Right. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I think about that every day. And I think people would be a lot happier if they also thought about it every day, because, people like get sad about like, death is like such a sad thing. And they're like, nah, man, like it's a natural thing. And the fact that we have a limited amount of time makes the time that we have mean something. So,
I
celebrate the life. Don't fear the death.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't agree with what Will just said. I don't actually think that our time being limited is what makes it valuable. However, I do agree with what Kris just said, and that it is not as tragic that our time comes to an end than it is miraculous that we got any time at all. And I think being grateful for that is important and can be a source of much joy in a life that can...
Your atomic structure right now is made of exploding dinosaurs and or stars. That's awesome.
It's pretty wild. But anyways, yeah. That seems like...
I'm good to leave it there.
That seems like as good
can we go home now?
As good a place as any to say thank you very much for joining us for episode 290 of the Platformers Podcast. If you would like to, we would love to have you. Please join us at twitch.tv/ribnax, RIBNAX. Not every week, but on Mondays. Right now we're looking at bi-monthly, so every other week. And you can also check them out at youtube.com/@ribnax. You can also check me out at those same usernames, Ribnax, at Twitter and Backlogged. And you can also find me at Blue Sky at Brian Barnett, BrianBarnett. And if you want to find the stuff that I'm doing, you can check out IGN Plus at IGN.com. And I've also got some top 10 pieces that are coming up pretty soon. I've got some interviews that are going up that was going to be going up in the next week, but actually got pushed back to December. So that should be fun. I'm playing some stuff. There's also a lot of sweepstakes that you can go and enter as a part of IGN rewards. which is just like, if you have an IGN account, you can go and enter to win like a Steam Deck, a Switch OLED, a really sick gaming setup, including a PS5 and a TV, and like a custom built gaming PC. Like there's a bunch of shit that you can just enter to try to see if you can win. And if you're a member of IGN Plus, you can go and collect like complimentary game keys for a bunch of cool stuff, which I'm also writing about, and I'm also doing like developer interviews on. So that's what I'm doing now, and that is where you can find me.
By contrast, my resume is a lot shorter, but you can find me at versus the backlog, vsthebacklog.com, one word. That is where I post most of my stuff and have links to previous things I have done. As ever, not posting nearly enough, working on it. There's like 3 things I've just got waiting to go. I'm just got to order it out and put it's imaging. It's images, right? Screenshots and getting them off the Switch, and that's what holds me back half the time. Point is, yeah, you can find me there. You can find me on most things at Delphia, EI, rather than IE. And most video games, on Twitter, though I don't use it that much, and around the internet.
You can find me at ByWillBurger. That's Burger with an O, not a U, on Twitter. You can find me at Edgar Allan Bro on Blue Sky and Edgar Allan Bro on Backlogged. And if you are interested in stuff that I've been doing, we're running a bunch of stuff on IGN. IGN First for Tekken 8. There's a bunch of stuff still coming. I think we have 3 pieces out now. It's really, really cool. Please read it if you're interested in Tekken. I think it's shaping up to be fantastic. I'll talk about it a little bit more in the future when we've got everything a little bit more hashed out. We're still early process here. You can also check out a review I wrote on IGN for Star Trek Infinite, latest 4X game. Star Trek games, pretty interesting little game. And if you are using the IGN guide for Mortal Kombat 1, I wrote most of it. So, hopefully if you're doing that, check it out, get some use out of it. I think it's pretty good. I just finished my final bits today, right before this podcast, actually. So yeah, find me there, and that's it. Chat with me on Twitter.
That reminds me. I picked this up in Seattle from my buddy Wolf. Will, have you seen this?
What is it? Ooh. I have one actually.
Guilty Gear Strive, the board game. There we go. You have one of these?
Yeah, I have one. I backed the Kickstarter. You better believe it.
I did not. He just had this, and he was giving me stuff. Like, he gave me an extra Switch dock and that handle thing, and then I saw this, and I was like, oh, what the hell is this? And he was like, yeah, you can have that if you want. And I'm like, yes, please. So
yeah, I haven't actually played it yet. So
yeah, but yeah, that's cool. I saw that, and I was like, there's a Guilty Gear board game? What?
There's a lot of board games that are based off game licenses nowadays. It's just,
there's a Dark Souls board game that I have heard, a Dark Souls board game, or the Bloodborne one that I've heard is pretty good, actually.
Dark Souls is a bit grindy, but okay. It's pretty good. But like board games, that's a whole podcast worth. But like,
yeah,
board games are in a golden age at the moment. They're doing pretty well.
Man, you know what? I need to hit up Matt Adler and get him on here so we can talk about board games, because I know that he's reviewed quite a few for IGN.
I'm a big board game guy, but please, it's almost 11 o'clock.
Let's not go into any more tangents. This went longer than we expected. This had no original, major topic, and boy, did we make it a major topic. So
we really did,
gentlemen.
Existentialism. Anyways, if you like the show, please give us a review or tell somebody about it. But from everybody here at the Platformers, we hope you have a wonderful week and stay safe out there, because until next time, we are out.
Peace.